Welcome. Today you're going to get your first seriously graded college level papers returned to you. And we're going to discuss the principles of college level writing, which are really the principles of professional level writing, whether it's oral or written, the way you communicate in a way that is expected in the careers that you hope your college degree will take you to. Now, this can often be kind of a traumatizing day. You had 12 years of public school where your teachers were mostly concerned with bolstering your self-esteem and making sure you felt good about yourself and liked learning. And really, the essays you were asked to write in high school were really just regurgitative reports. You had to prove to the teacher that you paid attention in class, and that was about it for the requirements. Now, you all had to pass Comp 1 in order to take this class, so I know that you have been exposed to the principles of essay writing. But one course after 12 years of public school doesn't necessarily cause it to stick for you. So we're going to see how much you remembered from Comp 1, how much your writing skills have advanced, where they are, and then talk about how to really improve them, how to make your writing effective, which is what you want. Right? Now, to begin this process, we're going to play a little game in which I read to you passages of your essays, and you tell me what's wrong with them. Okay? Anonymously, of course. All right. Are we ready to go? Somebody give me a shout out.
Yep.
Yep. All right. Here we go. All right. So here we are in the middle of a paragraph related to Bronze Age Hebrew Bible writings. Deuteronomy 20. Ready? Here we go. In chapter 20 of Deuteronomy, God is imagined to be with the believers at all times. And so no believer should have fear for his enemies, but should rather have courage and motivation to defend the Lord and pass on his words. The Lord expects all non-believers to be destroyed. In a later chapter of Deuteronomy, the Lord expects the believers to always spread his word to others and to teach all the children the messages of God as best as they can. In doing so, he will, quote, avenge the blood of his servants or render vengeance to his adversaries. God during this time is portrayed as a merciful Lord who will shelter his believers from their enemies and rescue them to a promised land upon death. Now, there are several problems with this. Start anywhere and tell me what needs fixing. Just speak up when you got some.
In my essay, what needs fixing?
No, in what I just read to you, what's wrong with this?
It doesn't sound like an essay. It sounds like it's just like straight from the book or something.
Okay, well, they are talking about stuff. They're not just regurgitating the book. They had a quote. They talked about their understanding of the quote. But what's wrong with conceptually, what's wrong with this?
Citation?
No. You're looking at details. You're missing the forest for the trees here. You remember Deuteronomy 20, right? What happened in Deuteronomy 20? Somebody speak up. What was Deuteronomy 20 all about?
Isn't Deuteronomy 20 about warfare?
It's the rules of warfare. You remember reading that? All that stuff about slaughter your enemies, kill all the men, take the women and children, sell them into slavery. And if there are people that live nearby, kill everything that breathes. Remember all that stuff? Okay, so that's what they're commenting on. How does this commentary match the actual material?
It doesn't, because it describes mercy when it's very vicious, and it gives you a detailed outline of how to destroy everyone.
Exactly. Did you read Deuteronomy 20 and respond with, well, what a merciful Lord that was? Is he merciful to the Canaanites? Is he merciful to the people he's preaching genocide on? No, this is not at all that. What else is wrong with this? What's all the stuff about he wants others to teach all the children the messages of God? Do the Hebrews proselytize? Do they try to spread the worship of Yahweh to other peoples? They come knocking on your door with some literature. Maybe you'd like to come join a meeting. No, they're henotheists. They're xenophobes. They don't like other people. They do their best to keep other people away from their religion. They don't even write down the name of their God because they don't want other people to call upon him. They're isolationists from them. So spreading the messages of God, that's absurd. And what is this about rescuing them to a promised land upon death? Where do Hebrews go when they die?
Sheol.
Sheol. Good Hebrews, bad Hebrews, mediocre Hebrews, they all go to the same place, as the book of Job makes clear. There's no heaven or hell for them in the Hebrew Bible. So, all this stuff that I'm reading has nothing to do with the first several weeks of this class and what we've been discussing. There is no recognition of the historical realities that we've taken pains to unravel here. So what am I reading? Where did this all come from? All this commentary is not from my class. Where do they get this stuff? Turn on your audio and talk to me.
I'm not sure where they got all that stuff.
What does it sound like?
Possibly Sunday school. It sounds like Jesus. It sounds like Christianity post-Jesus.
Exactly. This is Sunday school. This is someone's dim memories of what they learned in Sunday school. They're talking about the Bible and, sing-songy Jesus ways. Teach all the little children. He's got the whole world in his hands. It's very nice, but it has nothing to do with 3,000 years ago in the Bronze Age. This is church stuff, all right? Which is fine for church. That's just not what we're doing here. We're looking at history objectively and looking at the reality of the words in front of us that we're reading. So you've got to be able to do that. Now, this particular problem is unique to this particular assignment. Remember, most of the stuff that we teach in humanities, you've never heard of before. So we have to, sell you on the idea of Socrates and Galileo and why this is interesting and so forth. The Bible is fascinating to teach because it's the only subject where most of my students already have an opinion about it. They've heard about it. And whether positive or negative, it's not just new material. So they already have something in their head. And sometimes that's a problem. And sometimes it's easier if you've never read this before, just read it and write this paper. Because if you have grown up going to church, you have to kind of unlearn some of those things and learn to just think about this in a different way. And it can be difficult to do this. And you end up writing things like, basically, how we feel about God now is how Hebrews interpreted God back then. Really? Do you sacrifice goats on Sunday morning when you go to church? Do you take live animals to your Sunday morning meetings? String them up by their hind legs, slit their throats, drain off the warm, frothy blood, and slop it up against the sides of stone altars? Do y'all do that on Sunday morning? No? Well, then it's not the same, is it? It's different, which is also why it's interesting to see how things really were in the past. It's why we study history. Okay? So that particular problem is unique to this assignment, all right? And that's got to be on guard. I get a few Sunday morning sermons on this paper. Now I'm going to read a few more examples that are standard kinds of errors. This is not about the content anymore. It's about your technique in writing about it. And I find after decades of teaching that there's just a handful of standard sort of mental approaches that are in error that students make. And once you know what they are, you can be on guard against them and make sure you don't do them. Okay? So here is the most common problem in sophomore essay writing. We're going to eradicate this from your writing today. You're never going to make this mistake again after today. All right? Here we go. Listen, and then you're going to talk to me. You're going to tell me what sounds wrong with this. People interpret the Hebrew Bible in many ways. God constantly gives his people instructions on how to accomplish certain tasks, as well as laws they need to follow in order for them to be one with God. The way that God tells his people to do these things constantly changes, as well as his actions. Everywhere from the early to the later section, the Bible perceives God in very different ways. And that's the entire intro paragraph. What's wrong with this, just as writing technique goes?
No thesis statement.
Well, the thesis statement is that the Bible perceives God in very different ways. That is technically a thesis. It's just not a very good one. What's wrong with the entire thing is the same problem going on.
Broad.
Broad, what's another word?
It's repetitive.
A little bit, but that's not the word.
It's not specific.
It's not specific, which means it starts with the letter V.
Vague.
Vague. That is one of the most common words I write on papers all the time. Vague. These are bland, generic terms that do not say anything. Let me read this again, and this time I'll also provide the mental voiceover going on in your professor's head as he's reading these words. You ready? People interpret the Hebrew Bible in many ways. What ways? God constantly gives his people instructions. What instructions? On how to accomplish certain tasks. What tasks? As well as laws they need to follow. What laws? In order for them to be one with God. What the hell does that mean? The way that God tells these people to do these things constantly changes, as well as his actions. From the early to the later sections of the Bible, God is perceived in very different ways. What are these ways? Words like new, old, different, they don't say anything. You're not really communicating anything tangible, anything concrete to your reader. It's like, for example, let's say I were to ask you, hey, go out to my car in the parking lot and get my book. What are you going to ask me?
What book?
And?
Have the car.
What car and what book, right? Oh, go out to my new car and get my interesting book. Does that help you narrow it down? No?
Not really.
Not really.
Only slightly.
Go out to my fascinating new car and get my interesting book, the one with the powerful ideas in it. Have you narrowed it down any further yet?
Nope.
No. So those kinds of words, those kinds of descriptors are like bland spice that people sprinkle on their essays, and they do nothing to help the flavor of the thing. If you like my extended metaphor, if you're going to go to the effort to write an essay, find words that actually say something, concrete terms. And in this particular paper, one of the most annoying things is to have somebody quote a passage from somewhere in all of this that you had to cover and say, this shows what a powerful God he was. Really? Mind-blowing revelation. God is powerful. Of course he's powerful. He's God. By definition, he's powerful. When is he not powerful? That's always true. And if the point of this paper is to tell me the difference between Bronze Age and Classical Age depictions of Yahweh, then saying, well, here he's shown as powerful is useless, because he's going to be powerful later on too. All right? That doesn't do anything good. So, rule number 1 of how to improve your writing immediately. After you finish your first draft, you go back and look at every adjective you've used, every descriptor, every place where you have said something about the material, and ask yourself, is this the most precise term I could have used? The most tangible, concrete, effective term I could have used? Or can I find something better? Because when you write, what you need to do is to take your reader, whoever that is, and help them focus their attention on exactly what you're trying to convey. And so broad, generic terms don't help them focus. They just kind of make everything more bland, and they just muddy the waters. Your job is to clarify the issue. So find the best words possible. Start with your adjectives. Every descriptor. Make it better. Okay? That is the most common problem, the one we need to fix immediately today. Here is the second most common problem. I'm going to start about in the middle of something, all right? Man viewed the Lord as a human figure with a divine presence. The Lord was giving to man, and he gave him the riches of the earth he created. Adam and Eve disobeyed him, and he cursed Eve, but still gave advice to help them. Later, when man engaged in war, they called upon the Lord for his help and victory. Man did not know God as a presence on earth, but up high in the sky in a temple. God was angry and threatening and fought with man. Man thought the presence of God made him stronger. God set forth laws for man and expected them to be obeyed. God took vengeance against anyone who sinned. God created the great flood because humans had sinned. Noah and his family was man's second chance to right the wrong. God tested Abraham in his faith by telling him to sacrifice his only son. When God saw Abraham was willing to do this, he made him father of all nations. Stop me when this gets too nauseating, all right? Moses served God, but when he trespassed against him, he did not allow Moses to enter the promised land. And Amos, God would not accept man's offering because he had sinned. Seriously, somebody stop me. How much more of this do you want to hear? None? Yes? Listen, we're having the difficulty here because this is not live. This is a much better show when I'm doing it in person, right? But you got to turn your audio on and you got to talk, all right? I got to get some feedback here, all right? You got to make sure you're with me. Now,
Gotcha.
okay, what's going on? What's wrong with this? All these things were factually elements of the Bible, so what's the problem?
It's explaining stories.
It's what?
It's just a regurgitation of facts.
It's just a regurgitation of facts, exactly. It's just rehashing the plot of the story. This is the second most common problem, and it's a habit left over from high school in which you had to read, Hamlet or something, or Romeo and Juliet, and your essay, you just had to kind of prove you read it by regurgitating what happened in the story, right? This is college. The plot of the story is the least important thing. We've all read the material. So you don't need to prove to me that you remember what happened in class or that you know what's in the material. You're adults now going to, money and effort to have college courses. I'm going to assume that you're taking this seriously and that you've done your reading, all right? Whether it's true or not, I just like to go on that assumption, right? So you don't need to do that. And I think a lot of students feel that when they write an essay, they're writing it to prove something to the professor, to impress the professor, and that is not the case. When you write, don't think of me as being the audience for your paper, and don't think of random people out in the world as being the audience for your paper that need to have all of this, explained to them. When you write an essay, pretend your audience are your classmates, your peers, people that have read the same material, that have heard most of the same lectures, they've been exposed to the same experience, but maybe didn't have the deep and profound insight that you had as you thought about the paper. So you're sharing with somebody generally in the know what they could have also understood. You're sharing your insights. So you don't need to rehash everything. All you got to do is bring your reader's attention to the point you want to talk about. Just focus them in on this passage, this quote, just give enough background to put the context there, and then start talking about the ideas. You start to interpret, you start to discuss, and you do this in your voice. Okay? Now, does anybody feel like they've heard their essay read yet?
No,
No?
keep going.
You're waiting to hear yours?
Yeah. I have a question about mine.
Please, okay, go ahead.
I quoted Deuteronomy,
Yeah.
and it was a pretty good passage about his warlike, when he passes by
Yeah.
towns to, rape and pillage and take everything that's yours, it's your inheritance.
The rape and pillage stuff, yeah. And?
So I had summarized it, the previous paragraph, and then I quoted it, but you said in the grading that I didn't, go in depth, I guess, enough for you, but in a one-page paper, there's really not enough room. I had to put 1 inch spacing instead of 1.5 because I didn't have enough room to talk about everything else.
So we're getting into fine details that we don't need to get into now. I'm going to edit this part out when I go to post this later, okay? We'll get to all that, okay? Now, first of all, you're not going to hear any of your papers. These are not really your papers. These are papers from years ago. They're just standard examples that I have collected. I just like students to think I might read their paper because it makes you kind of terrified, and that makes you really, really awake. I know you're listening. Okay, so sorry, little pedagogical ploy. Now, I want to read a paper from you that is a more rare kind of a problem, but it's the kind of problem that you may find yourself getting to as you start to improve your writing, and especially if you're really trying to be a good writer. This is a paper that was turned in on January 26, 1997. I've been reading this paper for 24 years now to classes. Hold on tight because this is amazing. You ready? Are you ready?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
Yes.
Considering all the major aspects of the Hebrew Bible and culture, it seems very likely that they were setting a religious standard for the younger generation. They refused to believe what they thought was nothing more than an opinion. They were searching for some direction of sense, a direction that could lead them to the power beyond their limitations. Their imagination of God was just as wide as the faith in the group to which they followed. To them, God was some kind of supreme entity who was actually talking to them, responding to their dreams and wishes, and protecting them from harm and evil. The only way they could see or feel God was through the rainbow, the symbol of God's existence, and is guaranteed to secure the world to the last day. Wow. Anybody want to tell me what's wrong with that? Because it sounded beautiful.
Was this on prompt?
Say what?
Was this on the same prompt?
Yeah. I've been assigning this
Then
essay for
there's
25 years.
thesis.
It's not about details of thesis or whatever exactly. It's about the whole approach to the writing. What they've chosen to do with their words on paper in response to the very same prompt that you had.
It doesn't really explain the prompt.
Yeah.
How would you describe the nature of the writing? Because it sure sounded pretty.
It sounded sermony, like they were preaching.
It sounded what?
It sounded preachy.
It sounded a
It
little
sounded like
preachy.
it was not fluff. Yeah.
This is what we call the vague rhapsody paper. Rhapsodic. It's beautiful. The language is just delightful. It's elevating. It's gorgeous poetry. And I've been reading this for 24 years, and I still have no idea what this kid was trying to talk about. What? It's beautiful. I haven't a clue. And the thing is, it's not like this guy just tried to, boogie through his paper and just turn in some sloppy bullshit. This guy spent hours and hours crafting these sentences. And I remember this kid well. He really wanted to be a good writer. I have this paper in Renaissance Humanities class that I've also been reading for a quarter of a century now as well. He always did this vague rhapsody paper. And the problem is that he's trying so hard to write stylishly and in this elevated language that he's just writing a lot of rhapsodic fluff that means nothing. He's trying to write stylishly. He's trying to fly before he can crawl. So a little thing about style in your writing. What is style? What is the definition of style? Whether it's writing or music or anything. What is style?
Is it the way that you write specifically?
It is about you specifically, you're right. Like when you read Ernest Hemingway, in a couple of sentences, you know that's Hemingway. He has a distinctive style. When you listen to Eric Clapton play guitar, it only takes a handful of notes and you know, that's slow hand Clapton right there. Right? When you watch Michael Jordan play basketball, even if it's just a silhouette and you can't see the number 23, all you got to see is a few of those Air Jordan moves and you know that's Michael Jordan. And that's why his little silhouette is on your sneakers. He had a distinctive style. Now, whether it's literature or music or athletics, if you divorce the details of what they're doing, what is the piece of it that is their style? You want me to put a definition on that?
Can you repeat the question?
What is style? Doesn't matter if it's writing or music or athletics. The thing we call style, where does that come from?
Is that the uniqueness?
The characteristics of said individual or habits that they hold?
Yes, the characteristics of said individual. That sounded very formal. To put it more simply, style is your personality expressed in your art. Hemingway did not practice writing in his distinctive way. He just practiced writing. And when he got good at it, his style emerged. Eric Clapton didn't practice playing slow hand notes like that. He practiced chords and scales. And when he could, jump to a C7 minor chord without thinking about how to do that, then his style was able to emerge. Michael Jordan. You ever seen high school video of Michael Jordan playing basketball? He was a big clumsy oaf, right? He didn't practice those elegant Air Jordan moves. He practiced dribbling and passing in the fundamentals. And when the fundamentals were down, his style of play simply emerged from his personality. So here's the problem. You guys are sophomores, okay? You got no style yet. Or you do, but it's buried inside and it can't get out because you're still working on the fundamentals of writing. You need to be able to practice the basic skills of writing And when you no longer have to think about or look at a diagram to remind you, where does a thesis statement go? How long should my intro paragraph be? Wait, what's the topic sentence? Once you're able to do this without having to think about it, you have the fundamentals down, and you start getting smoother, more comfortable with your writing, then your style just happens. So don't try to work on your style. You don't need to. It's already there. It's your personality. What you got to work on are the fundamentals so that your style can come out. Okay? So as you get better and as you start seeing the tricks that make some writing better and more interesting than others, don't try to emulate those stylistic details. What you really want to emulate are the fundamentals. Practice those. Your style will come out on its own. All right? All right. So that's enough of reading old papers. The papers that you have. Sarah said that she had already looked at her comments. I actually unpublished those papers. I did not want you to look at them until I released them, but I guess that doesn't work on Zoom the way I think it does.
Yeah, I'm sneaky.
You what?
I'm sneaky.
You snuck in there, Sarah. Okay.
Good.
Keep an eye on you. All right. Well, in any case, let me give a few disclaimers before we actually talk about your papers. All right. First of all, remember that I used to be you. I am a very practiced writer now. I'm a published author. I publish in my field of medieval technology and so forth. But I used to be a fresh out of high school graduate at Valencia Community College on the West Campus many, many moons ago, thinking I was a great writer, thinking I had skills, right? My high school teachers always told me what a bright young man I was. I spent 3 years on my high school newspaper staff. I thought I was a great writer. And then I write my first humanities essay. And you want to guess what the future Dr. Brooks, PhD in humanities, got on the first essay he ever wrote in the field he would once hold a doctorate degree in? Take a guess.
30%.
I did a little better than that. Not much.
6 out of 10.
D-.
They were letter grades. I have a little different system. I got a D+ on my first humanities essay in college.
At least you got a plus.
Say what? Well, at least I got the plus. I know. There to make me feel better or something. I don't know. There must have been one little inkling of, potential in there.
Silver lining.
So I get this D on my first paper. I don't make Ds. And I was furious. And I went to Professor Schlegel's office and I said, this can't be right. My high school teachers always told me what a bright young man I was, and I was a fine writer. I need a reconsideration. Professor Schlegel kind of chuckled in his seat. He sort of had this sort of Socrates vibe about him. He chuckled and said, George, sit down. Yes, sir. I sit down. And I don't actually remember the rest of the conversation. I don't remember the details of what he said to me. I mostly remember how I felt at that moment.
Embarrassed?
I was embarrassed and I was terrified. I was just in shock that for the first time in my life, the teacher was not telling me what a bright young man I was. They were telling me to sit down, let me explain to you everything you did wrong, and how to go and fix it. It was jarring. It was also kind of invigorating. It was healthy. Like peeling off the Band-Aid, It's a good kind of pain. When he got done explaining to me how you write an essay, he said, you think you can do that? Yes, sir. All right. So go rewrite the intro and a body paragraph, and I'll reconsider that. Show me you learned something. Okay. And I did. And I brought my revised versions back, and he made my grade a C. The next essay made a B, and the last two made A's. And I made an A in that class. I started off with a D+ on my first exam, and I made an A in that class. And looking back, I realized that my only problem was that I was half asleep. I think back to that moment in Professor Schlegel's office as the day my brain woke up, the day he plugged it in and made it start working.
Sir,
I honestly have
can you
trouble.
please say that again? You broke up.
Oh, okay. That day in Schlegel's office was the day my brain woke up. I honestly
It
have
was before
trouble.
that.
Yeah, before that.
It was before that.
What part? What was the last thing I said?
I don't know because you broke up.
Okay. Anyway, I was terrified in Schlegel's office of the professor being honest with me instead of bolstering my self-esteem. Okay? I look back and I realize that I'd simply been mentally asleep. I honestly have trouble remembering what I did in high school, what I thought about. Other than playing guitar and chasing girls, I hardly remember actually working hard on any assignments, other than a couple of newspaper articles I wrote. I don't even remember the poetry I read or the short stories I read, the things that I wrote about it, the test I took. I can barely remember high school these days. Okay? I woke up around third period, and I made A's and B's. I graduated in the top 10% of my class, and I was asleep the whole time. So the point is, high school, not really much of a challenge. When you get to college is when real school begins. And often it just takes a jarring experience like getting a really bloody paperback and a low grade on it to wake you up. Now, Professor Schlegel gave me the chance for redemption, and I took it, and I ran with it. I did well, which means I now have to pay this forward. Nobody's grade is sunk because of what you got on this paper. In fact, most people make a 2 on this paper. On a scale of 0 to 10, most of you made a 2. If you made higher than a 2, that means you have some degree better than average writing skills. Okay? And if you got a 0, it means that something, it's not a 0, it's really an empty set. So Zoom doesn't give me a thing for that. Or Canvas doesn't give me a thing for that. What it means is that something fundamentally misfired, and I need you to figure it out. We can have a private meeting and talk about it. I want you to get this fixed in your head and then rewrite your paper so that I can give it a grade. And all of you have the option of rewriting this paper after today if you want to try to raise your grade. As long as you have a number grade that's not a 0, you don't have to. If you have a 0, you have to. But if you have a number grade, you have the option of doing it. Or you can just go on to the next assignment and take it from there. And that'll work as well. Okay? So don't be afraid of that. And one more thing. Normally I've got a stack of papers in my hand that I'm about to hand out to people. Let's just pretend that's still the case, all right? Before I give these papers back to you, I got to say one more thing. A lot of students don't know how to get a paper back from the professor. You see, they get the paper back, and they see what would be all the bloody red comments on it, and they recoil from it. Oh, God. The professor bled all over my paper. Look what he did. He lacerated the thing. Dr. Brooks must hate me. Well, I hate him, big jerk. They get all personally mad at me about it. Folks, listen. If you wrote a poem and you wanted to share your poem with your friend, and you said, hey, good buddy of mine, would you like to read my poem? And your friend returned your poem to you with a bunch of bloody red marks and commentary all over it saying what's wrong with it, okay, you could be offended by that. That would be a rude thing for your friend to do to you. But folks, you and I, we're not friends. We're friendly, I hope, with each other over Zoom, but we do not have a friendship. We have a professional relationship with each other. We have a teacher-student relationship. We have a job to do here, okay? My job is to help you get over what 12 years of public school did to you. And I've only got 16 weeks to do it. So I've learned over my many years of teaching that it is best just to go for the blunt, brutal approach. I got to wake you up and then show you where to go and do things. It's kind of like when you join the military and you go to boot camp. Your drill sergeant is not there to be your friend. He's not there to console you and consult you with you and talk about your feelings. He don't care. His job is to call you a maggot, tell you to drop and give him 20 push-ups. Is it because your drill sergeant hates you? No. Your drill sergeant has no opinion of you at all. Your drill sergeant has a job to do. His job is to take raw recruits and make them into soldiers who can survive in warfare. College is like boot camp for your brain, and I'm the drill sergeant. My job is to take you and in the short time I have you, in this boot camp that we're in, whip you into as best shape I can so that you can go off into the professional world and survive. That you go off into the rest of your college years and survive. My only job, the only thing that matters, is how much quality work I can get out of you in the short time that I have you. So don't be personally offended because we have no personal relationship. In fact, when you look at that paper, and you see all those comments I made on the side, which I bet are a whole lot more comments than any other writing professor will ever put on your paper while you're at Valencia. You're going to do a social science Gordon Rule class as well. Those guys are barely going to read your paper, all right? because we just gave them those because they took it so that they'd have room for student success. You used to take 2 of these humanities Gordon Rule classes. Now you only get 1. We spent our whole careers working on teaching writing skills. So this may be the only class you get this in. And when you read all those comments and see all those marks, don't recoil from it and have negative feelings. In fact, you should do just the opposite. You should look at all those comments and go, wow, look what Dr. Brooks did for my paper. It must have taken him 20 minutes to read this. Look at all the effort he put into this. And think about how much time Dr. Brooks spends doing this. I would rather be playing with my kids drawing on the whiteboard back there. I'd rather be watching cartoons or something. I'd rather be drinking a beer. Instead, I'm putting comments on your papers. And I don't get paid extra for all the amount I put on there. I get my same salary if I spend 30 seconds or 20 minutes.
And you got tenure.
Well, of course I got tenure. I've been doing this forever, right? And that's just it. I mean, I can barely even be fired. I'm practically bulletproof, all right? But I still spend all this time doing it. Why? What motivates Dr. Brooks to cash in so much of his irreplaceable life putting comments on your papers? Why do I do it? Because what?
You're a good person.
Hopefully. You know the real reason? It's because I love you. We're not friends. Don't take this the wrong way. We are not friends. But I love you. I care about you. I care about my profession. If I didn't, I wouldn't be any good at this job. The only professors that are good at their job are the ones that love their students, that care about them, and really want to see them succeed. And so all these marks come from love. That's it. All right? So keep that in mind when you look at your comments. Now, apparently they're already available to you. So I will go ahead and also publish that page again. I don't know why they were already there, but I'm going to go ahead and oops, wrong tab. My thing's working slow. Give me just a second here.
I've been able to see the comments since it was published.
I graded them all early this morning. Did you go into home to see
I don't know
it,
if
or
maybe you
grade
just
to see it?
published it that way.
Yeah, but
Yeah, you just made the page invisible. Like, I still get text messages when you grade stuff, so I can still access it. Even if I
yeah,
I'll be
like
glad when
if
it's
you,
face to
if you
face
post
again.
the grade, then we can still see it.
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Well, I'll either figure this out or just this little shtick works a lot better when I walk into class with a handful of papers. Anyway, doing our best here. Okay. So under Gordon Rule Essays, the little module called Gordon Rule Essays, the page is now published. So you already have access to your Hebrew Bible essay. So go through and look at the comments and the number on it. And you also now have published an essay critique guide. And I need you to open that now as well. Okay? I'm going to give you a minute to do that while I pause this video. I'm going to go grab one thing out of my office, and I will be right back. Okay?
Okay.
All right, everybody have time to look at it?
Yep.
Okay. Open up the Essay Critique Guide document that should now be visible to you under Gordon Rule Essays. And here you will find 6 pages that is the summary assistance for this paper. Also, make sure that you have read the guidance on writing an essay that has been there since the beginning of the course. That is my 8 or 10 pages or so summary of everything you're supposed to learn in Comp 1 and how to apply it to humanities and any other course where you have to write an effective professional essay and talk about some ideas. Okay? So some basic things are there. First of all, a lot of you didn't read the part about putting interesting titles on your paper. Essays, by definition, have a title. You must put a title on them. And make your title interesting. Nobody wants to read something called assignment number 2. Right? Nobody wants to. So don't just call it Hebrew Bible essay. That's the assignment. But you compose the title. And often the title is the last thing you write. Because if you do your essay writing properly, you don't really know what your essay is going to be until you write it. You have an idea when you get started, but the very process of writing an essay should take you deeper into thought on the material than just reading and thinking about it alone would do. Writing is a way of learning, and when you're forced to write, you come to deeper, better insights because you achieve ultimate focus on the material in question. And then when you see where your paper actually went to, what it became, then you look back on it, and the really clever title should come to you. But your title is your first chance to hook your viewer. So you want to give it something interesting, make him intrigued, and want to read your essay. All right? So give your essays good titles. All right? Make it the last thing you write. All right. So your essay critique guide, you should have several things. Page 1, physical paper, are the little standard marks that I make on papers. This is usually when I'm hand grading papers, which I like to do on these first ones. But some of these basic shorthands will still be there. Paraphrase, dangling quote, word choice. Interpretation, a big capital I with a question mark, means that you've given me some facts or some quotes, but you're not telling me why it's significant. And that's what you do in an essay. You have to interpret the significance, the meaning of the material. Okay? If you get an RTOL, read this out loud. Over 90% of the technical grammatical problems in papers that I encounter, you can easily fix yourself if you just read your essay out loud slowly and listen to it. Don't read what you think you wrote. Read what you actually wrote. Read those words and listen to them, and you will hear most of those mistakes. All right? So that's page 1. Page 2, something I saw come through my email internet inbox one day. Rules about how to write good. Does that sound correct to you?
It's how to write well.
How to write well. Very good. All right, so rule about how to write good. Here we have 32 rules, basic technical pointers about how to write. And every one of these rules is breaking the rule it's telling you not to commit. Like verbs has to agree with their subjects. And don't start a sentence with a conjunction. Also, always avoid annoying alliteration.
Oh my God, these are like nails on the chalkboard.
Oh, exactly. They should be. Good. That means you know what you're doing. All right, good. What I want you to do later today is read through all of these little 32 rules and do a giggle check on them. Make sure you get why each one of these is supposed to be funny. Because any one you read and you don't get what the joke is, that means you don't understand the rule that they're breaking. Okay? So you go and check all of those because you were supposed to know all this stuff when you graduated high school. I know that is usually not the case. But the Florida legislature years ago decided we can't make you take remedial courses, no matter how bad your writing is. And Comp 1 starts with how to construct an essay. They don't teach you how to write sentences and where a semicolon goes. That's why I suggest getting a little book about sentence construction, like The Well-Tempered Sentence, all right, by Karen Elizabeth Gordon, or something like that. You got to get yourself up to speed. And the library has stuff. The English department has made stuff in the library to fix all your skills. But it's up to you to fix those now. You should already be up there, and we're not going to go back and do it. So here's how to check. Here's how you diagnose what you need to work on, and then go fix it. Okay? All right. Skip the next page and go down, first of all, to page 5 of this handout, where you have a good example of a Hebrew Bible paper. Everybody find that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we're going to talk in a minute about the basic rules of good essay construction. But before we get there, I want you to read this one right now. It goes on 5 and it goes on to page 6. Take 5 minutes and read that while I figure out why I'm getting out of focus here. Okay, go. All right, y'all about done? Give me a holler if you're done. Oh, wait.
I'm done.
Done.
Okay, first person done. Give me another 30 seconds. Let's get back to it. All right, at least half of you done? Holler if you're done.
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 Okay. Would you consider this a well-written essay?
Yes.
Tell me why. I want you to analyze the particular qualities of the writing. Mention anything you want that makes it effective writing. What does she do well?
I was able to like follow along, and like throughout the whole time I was reading, I was able to like they would always come back to like the thesis statement pretty much. Like I was always like following what was happening.
All right, so there's quality number one. There's a great sense of connectivity through the essay. And when you mean that you're able to follow along, what that means is you hear the author's voice. They're in charge of the essay. They're controlling the discussion, which is why it flows organically together, and it's focused on explaining the point. It goes back to its thesis. So there's a great sense of continuity of focus through the whole thing. All right, so that's one quality it has. What other qualities?
They brought up the point that like the prompt is like how does God change? But they mentioned that God does not change; it is people who change.
Mm-hmm.
At the end, but that really I found that really interesting.
A good insight at the end to include an important reminder, because it's easy to get lost thinking, why is God changing his mind and stuff? But there's what this is called is metacognition. The author wasn't just thinking about and writing about the material, but also taking a step back and thinking about the big picture, to examine it from different angles, to think about the process of how we think about it. That's called not just cognition, but metacognition. So it's very aware of the subject, the nature of it, and why we're talking about it. Okay? So it's connected, it's metacognitive. What else? What else? One other thing in particular I want somebody to point out.
It was very organized.
It is very organized. Kind of a simple thing, basic technique.
I guess the way they transition the comparing to the old century to the new century, like in one paragraph they mentioned like how Adam and Eve, God showed up and they were like, you would think that God would like strike a thunder or something, but he came calming and stuff. The way they compared that.
In contrast.
Yeah.
Very good. First of all, it has really well chosen quotes, but they're employed in a very adroit way. Where rather, instead of just having, here's a big paragraph about the Bronze Age, and then here's a big one about the Classical Age, and then say what's different, it very smoothly navigates back and forth between them. And since the whole point of the paper is to contrast the two periods, it's effective to not have them in separate paragraphs, but to have that material side by side in the same paragraph and contrast back and forth as you go. And it does that really well. It starts off with the Bronze Age, but then as it gets to the later, it weaves back and forth, and that keeps you focused on the real point of the essay. Because a lot of you make the mistake, and again, it's sort of like leftover Sunday school stuff. You want to kind of sum up the nature of God. And we see all along here that God is powerful and loves his people or whatever, right? But that's not the essay question. The whole point is to tell me what's different about the periods. And the way that the material is organized does that exceedingly well. Good. So if you guys can recognize all of these useful qualities in the writing technique, you can do these things. It takes practice. And I remember the woman who wrote this, she was in the same class with Vague Rhapsody guy, in fact, years ago. She was in her 30s. She was already a practiced writer. She was not just fresh out of high school, right? But I want to give you a paper a little beyond where the level that most of you are at right now to show you what the goal is, what to shoot for. Okay? I want you to challenge yourself and push a little bit beyond here. The one other thing that's good about this is the adjective choices. All right? She talks about his anger and his brutality and things like that. The words that discuss the quotes are also well chosen words as well. Okay. All right. So this is the goal. Now, this paper also breaks some of those basic rules of Comp 1 that you learned. Did you notice the fact that this does not have an introductory paragraph set off from the rest of it? The thing that I told a lot of you in your comments, you need a better developed introduction. This doesn't have one at all. This essay, the very first sentence, begins with a quote and jumps you right into the middle of the Bronze Age. But it does it effectively. And the point is this. How many of y'all remember in Comp 1, or at some point, learning that tripartite thesis 5-paragraph essay structure that may have been laid out in a little geometrical structure that looked like this, an inverted triangle, 3 rectangles, and then a proper triangle. Can you all remember seeing that? Can you all see that?
It's called a hamburger.
It's hard
Can
to
you
see.
zoom in a little bit?
You zoom in a little bit.
There's supposed to be a hamburger.
Y'all remember that little design there? Where you
Yeah.
start with a general intro, you boil down to a thesis, 3 supporting
Bodies.
paragraphs, and then a conclusion. How many of y'all remember that?
Yeah.
Okay. This woman has not done this, all right? Because she doesn't have to. And you don't have to do that forever either. In fact, we don't want you to do that forever. These are training wheels. When you first learn to ride a bike, it's hard to make that stand up and not fall over. So we put training wheels on you. We don't expect you to stay on those training wheels forever. As safe as they are, we want you to take them off one day and venture to ride on your own. And then, do some crazy tricks on your bike. And it's the same with this. If you're still struggling with just how to put words and ideas together and say something and make your essay worth anything, then use the training wheels. It's perfectly fine at your level to use them. But know that you don't have to stick with that forever. One day you take them off and you learn to bend rules. You learn even to break rules. And that's okay once you have the skills to do it. And she was already at that level. I mean, all I did was slap A's on her paper. She was great, all right? But this is what you're looking for, all right? So I don't want you to immediately start doing this. You're not ready to break all the rules yet. Don't start leaping in, in the middle of things and stuff. Go and write intro paragraphs. But what you can emulate from this paper are solid word choices, concrete descriptors that say things. I want you to try to emulate the connectivity, the way that the author's voice stays in control and carries the discussion. It never wanders off on a tangent or gets lost. And a lot of you, this is sort of hard to explain, but a lot of you, when you're writing, I kind of feel like you've got a list of quotes in front of you that are leading you around by the nose. And so it's like, okay, over in Psalm 18 it says this. Then over here in Deuteronomy it says this. Okay. Oh yeah, there it is. There's Genesis. That said that. Don't let the material lead you around. You're the boss of your essay. You are in control of the discussion. It's your voice that should carry it through. You make those quotes serve you. Okay? You're the master of the essay. Those quotes come in and serve you as you need them. You're writing a little bit, you need a little more support, grab the best quote, put it in there, but keep your vision going. Don't put in too many quotes without your voice there talking about what they mean, what's significant about them. And achieving that balance is part of the trick part of the skill of learning to write an essay properly. Okay? So you stay in charge. And also, notice another thing that takes practice. When you first start using the training wheels, then one good method is to go through and find the 3 quotes you want to use, put 1 quote in each body paragraph, and then write the paragraph around it. Start with the quote, and then you write topic, sentence, introduction, there's the quote, interpretation, what it means, transition, repeat. Okay? But notice how this one doesn't just have a quote in each paragraph. There's little bits of quotes, a fragment here, a bit there, all brought in effectively to support her voice discussion as it's going forward. Okay? So I want you to work on that as well. Make the quotes serve you. Use them effectively. All right? As you push beyond this. Okay. Now, I'm going to zoom you in on the whiteboard. Perfect. All right. Essay. The writings that you do in college are mostly essays. You don't write a lot of poetry for a college assignment. Not really a lot of short stories or stream of consciousness. Not too many haikus will be assigned to you. You write essays. And an essay is the most objective, expository kind of writing in the most rule-controlled form of writing. The word essay, the nature of essays, it's an invented kind of writing. And it's called an essay because it comes from the French verb essayer, which is French for to try, to make an attempt. Right? The essay was the invention, some would consider, of a French late Renaissance writer named Michel de Montaigne, who invented the essay as a more effective and direct way for thinking people to share ideas than the scholastic treatise, which had been the dominant form of writing in higher education. We'll read a little bit of scholasticism at the end of this course. You'll see why he wanted to write something less boring, right? So he invented the essay as a way to just communicate ideas. So you try to make an attempt. And here's the goal. Here's you. You ever see yourself right here, this little stick man with a big head here? That's you.
Yeah.
With your head full of ideas. Look at your head throbbing with ideas. And you're happy and smiling because you like thinking about ideas. And what you want to do is share your ideas with somebody else. You want to achieve communication with another person. Because it's not fun sitting in your room having ideas that are all your own. You want to communicate with other people. We're social creatures. And during quarantine, during pandemic right now, has reinforced, I think, for all of us, how much we need human contact and other people. And that's true intellectually as well. Now, the problem is this. All your thoughts are in your head. When you write an essay, your goal is to take the thoughts in your head and put them into somebody else's head who's interested in hearing them. And since we can't do the Vulcan mind meld on each other and just blast them across, we have to resort to this method of taking our thoughts and translating them into a string of words, written in just such a way that another person can read our string of words and reassemble our thoughts. As simple as that sounds, that's really a mind-blowing revelation when you ponder it. That's what writing is, and speaking as well. And if you keep that in mind, it instantly helps your writing. Because you stop writing as a way of just pouring your thoughts on paper. You start writing in terms of, what words do I say, and in what order should I say them, so that another person can understand my words. So that's a critical rule of essay writing. You don't write for yourself. You write for other people to understand your writing. And I'll tell you something else, too. Essay writing is work. It is the most arduous mental labor I know of. I took calculus. Writing essays is harder than calculus. It's the hardest thing I did in college, was learn to write an essay well. And I'm still working on it. I don't write perfect essay. I revise and revise and revise these things. And it's always work. To be perfectly honest with you, I dread when I have to write something. I procrastinate, I put it off. Before I write, I clean the kitchen. And then I go find 5 other things to do to put it off for a while. Because I'm trying to avoid hard work. It's natural, it's human, and I will admit that to you. And it never becomes fun. Maybe writing poetry is fun. I don't know, I don't write poetry. I write essays. And it's work every time. It never becomes fun. So expect it to be work, but you can make the work easier by learning how to do it well. Okay? So that's the reality of it. Now, in order for us to get our thoughts in direct communication that is clear, concise, and compelling, forgive the alliteration, and communicate with somebody else, we got to avoid certain pitfalls. Pitfall number 1, writing that is too vague, too general. And that was that first common error that I read to you, where it's just about, and then the new ideas came along, and the old ideas went away, and powerful new rules, and we know what these words that mean nothing, right? So you got to use concrete terms, and you need examples. So you start writing things that are too vague, I'm going to be saying, example, quote, okay? Firm this stuff up, make it more solid. The second problem, fall off the other side, writing that is too specific. And that is that grocery list of facts regurgitated example that I read. You don't need to repeat all this stuff. We all read the same material. You're not teaching Joe Blow out there. You're not proving anything to me. You're writing to share thoughts and insights with your classmates. They've read it too. Just draw their attention to it and then start talking about something that matters. Okay? So these are the 2 main ways that people fall off this. Now, for example, based on this essay, all of you should have probably mentioned the 10 Commandments in this essay. Obviously, that's something important in the Bible that was in your reading. But what do you say about the 10 Commandments? Because everybody knows what they are. It seems obvious. What are you supposed to say? The common mistake is to say, God gave his people rules to follow. which several of you did. Or to say he gave them specific rules to follow. Ironically enough, the word specific is not specific. It says nothing, right? Or I guess you could just listen and say, well, he told them, don't kill, don't steal, don't covet, blah, blah, blah. Okay? One is too vague, the other is too detailed. What you need to do is look at the Ten Commandments and assess and extract from it what is the essence of the thing. What are they essentially really all about? And how do I say that in meaningful language? So, somebody out there, tell me, what kind of rules are the Ten Commandments? They're not traffic laws. What kind of rules are they?
Moral.
They're moral laws. Not a single one of you told me that the Ten Commandments were a moral law code, an ethical code of conduct. What is the purpose of moral law? Why do we need it?
Look successful with society.
Yeah, so that we can run a successful society. Exactly. So God is giving them in Exodus 20 a moral law code in order for them to run a successful society. Now, is there something from back in the Bronze Age that would make an interesting contrast to Exodus 20? It's also a chapter 20. Somebody? Were there some other rules from early on that weren't so moral?
The rules
The
of
rules
war.
of warfare.
The rules of warfare, exactly. They both just happen to be a chapter 20. So yeah, Deuteronomy 20 and Exodus 20 make for a very interesting comparison and contrast. So we have these brutal rules of warfare in Deuteronomy 20 compared to a moral law code in Exodus 20. And some of you, a couple of you, are still confused, thinking that Genesis chapter 1 is the oldest part of the Bible. It's not. It's actually one of the newer parts of the Bible. So again, don't be confused. The plot of the story is not the same thing as the age of the writing. All right? Just because Genesis 1 is about the beginning of time and the creation of the world does not make it ancient writing. It's really, by ancient standards, modern scientific writing. Right? For example, have any of y'all ever seen the movie Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter?
No, but that sounds awesome.
It is
watched
awesome. It is a surprisingly good movie. It came out maybe, 8 or 10 years ago, right? So it's about young Abraham Lincoln fighting vampires in the early 19th century. Now, that movie, is that about the early 19th century? Is it from the early 19th century? No. It's from a few years ago. The ideas in Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, do they reflect the concerns of the early 19th century? No. Who is it that is all obsessed with vampires?
Right.
Us. Nowadays, it's all over our entertainment and our media. So even though the movie is set in the early 19th century, does not mean it is from the early 19th century. It's from our times. It's just an interesting little fictional view back. Okay? So, keep that in mind. We're writing papers about the age of the words. So the words of Genesis chapter 1 are about much later times in Hebrew thinking. The words of Psalm 18, which in terms of the unfolding of the story would have come thousands of years later, those words are older because they were frozen in time in song form 400 years or so before the rest of the Bible got written down. Is that clear to everybody?
Yeah.
Okay. So a couple of you need to fix that in your papers because you still got all that backwards and confused. Okay. Now, what we've now said is that the Ten Commandments are a moral law code designed to lead to a successful society. That is walking that straight and narrow middle line there. It's not too vague, bunch of blather that means nothing, nor is it overly specific and wasting our time with details that we should all know already. All right? And that problem about vagueness, by the way, I realize I'm at the end of time, but I need about 15 more minutes. Everybody cool? If you got to go, you got to go. I'm going to record it anyway, but I'd rather finish this today. All right? Turn back in that handout to this, the all-purpose essay. This is a little exercise I created years ago to help rid you of that most common problem in writing in vague language that means nothing. Right? So here we have my little handy-dandy all-purpose essay. It's good for any assignment you ever have. I'm being sarcastic. Don't actually use this for every assignment. Actually, I had somebody do it once. In humanities class, you studied controversial people. People that had new ideas. And of course, these controversial people always have conflict with the old establishment, people stuck on the old ideas, right? So pick somebody you study in humanities. Heck, who did we study last class?
Jesus.
Jesus, all right? He was controversial. You're about to write an essay on him. Who was Jesus' opponents?
The Pharisees and the priesthood.
Scribes and the Pharisees, all right. Jesus is X, Pharisees are Y, plug them in, perfect essay. Listen to this. With the new and innovative ideas of Jesus, the world began to change. By revealing wisdom and truth to people, he showed them that things were not as they seemed. Consequently, society was forced to abandon old ways of thinking and turn towards a more modern approach. Jesus' teachings inspired numerous events, many of which had powerful, lasting effects. The Pharisees did not understand the ideas of Jesus and reacted against them. The Pharisees were stuck in old ways of thinking, and so they did not understand the new ideas of Jesus. Jesus challenged them, and against all odds eventually helped to enlighten his fellow man. Many people didn't understand Jesus' perspective at first, but at the same time many others did, and their understanding changed. Jesus broadened the horizons in a new direction and inspired many to further develop his teachings and ideas. Jesus reached all kinds of people from many different walks of life for many centuries, leaving a lasting impression even today. At a glance, that sounds pretty good, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's nothing wrong or inaccurate about it, but that's only because it hasn't really said much of anything to begin with. It hasn't risked taking a stand and actually saying something. To make the point clear, pick somebody else you might study in humanities. Somebody shout a name of somebody with a controversial new idea, anywhere in history.
Martin Luther.
Was that Martin Luther?
Yeah.
The Protestant Reformation guy?
Yeah, not the king.
Martin Luther King. Okay, so in Black History Month, let's do Martin Luther King. Who's Martin Luther King's opponents?
The U.S. government.
U.S. government. Who else?
Anyone who stands in the way of his movement.
Yeah, so what kind of people would stand in the way of his movement? It's about equality for everybody.
Segregationists.
Segregationists. Racists. Old white rednecks. Right? So he's got all kinds of opponents out there. All right, let's plug them in and see how it goes. With the new and innovative ideas of Martin Luther King Jr., the world began to change. By revealing wisdom and truth to people, he showed that things were not as they seemed. Consequently, society was forced to abandon old ways of thinking and turn towards a more modern approach. King's teachings inspired numerous events, many of which had powerful, lasting effects. The segregationists in the U.S. government did not understand the ideas of King and reacted against them. Them white rednecks were stuck in old ways of thinking, so they didn't understand the new ideas of King. King challenged them, and against all odds, eventually helped to enlighten his fellow man. Many people didn't understand MLK's perspective at first, but at the same time, many others did, and their understanding changed. King broadened the horizons in a new direction and inspired many to further develop his teachings and ideas. Martin Luther King reached all kinds of people from many different walks of life for many centuries, leaving a lasting impression even today. Many years, I guess, but yeah. Other than that, it works just as well for Martin Luther King as it did for Jesus. Pick one more. Somebody totally different.
Julius Caesar.
He's not really an idea guy. He's more like a brutal, stabby guy. Somebody with ideas.
How about Socrates?
Socrates! Good. All right, who's his opponents?
The Senate?
Well, they don't have a Senate, they're in Athens, but the Athenians, basically. The whole Athenian jury, right? Okay, that works. With the new and innovative ideas of Socrates, the world began to change. By revealing wisdom and truth to people, he showed them that things were not as they seemed. Consequently, society was forced to abandon old ways of thinking and turn towards a more modern approach. Socrates' teachings inspired numerous events, many of which had powerful, lasting effects. The Athenians did not understand the ideas of Socrates and reacted against them. The Athenians were stuck in old ways of thinking, so they didn't understand the new ideas of Socrates. Socrates challenged them, and against all odds, eventually helped to enlighten his fellow man. Many people didn't understand Gandhi's perspective at first, but at the same time, many others did, and their understanding changed. Galileo broadened the horizons in a new direction and inspired many to further develop his teachings and ideas. Confucius reached all kinds of people from many different walks of life for many centuries, leaving a lasting impression even today. You get the point? If your words are so broad and vague and general that they can apply to anybody and mean anything, then your words don't mean anything at all. You're not saying anything. And if you're going to put the effort into writing an essay, say something. Find words that say something. Okay? All right. On the back of that page, page 4 of your document, is how all of that applies to your real world life. Because no matter what field you're going into, every one of you are going to have to write an essay called your resume. An essay about how awesome you are and why you should be hired for the job. And the same skills that we apply here in writing an essay in a humanities class, you also apply there. Because when you apply for a job, 400 other people have applied for that same job. And the office has some manager worker who has to go through all of these and weed it down to about 8 to show the big boss for them to consider. Do not give that person any excuse to take your resume and drop it in the round file, because all they want to do is whittle down that stack. And if you start writing in vague, meaningless, generic terms, out it goes. Not even worth looking at anymore. So here is some really good advice that also came through my email one day about how to make a proper resume. Instead of writing things like experienced working in a fast-paced environment. Yeah, no crap. It's the modern world. Who doesn't work in a fast-paced environment? That's like saying that God is powerful. Obviously he is. That says nothing meaningful. Instead, tell him something concrete. Register 120 plus third shift emergency patients per night. That sounds impressive, right? And so on. So review the all-purpose essay, then review how you're going to use this, all of you, one day, along with how you're going to use it in your future papers. All right? Okay. To wrap this up, before we forget everything we have learned today, and actually, sorry, 2 things. 1, this Hebrew Bible paper, you should be able by the end of it to boil it all down to one sentence. One kind of lengthy sentence with a semicolon in it. The whole point of this paper is that if we disentangle the various writings that compose the Hebrew Bible and look at it in terms of what had been the old Bronze Age language of worship to the later Classical Age language that got captured in writing, we're going to find that their vision of God went from a blank, blank, blank God to a blank, blank, blank God. Adjective, adjective, noun, adjective, adjective, noun. Bronze Age Yahweh. Give me 2 well-chosen adjectives to describe what you see in Psalm 18 and Deuteronomy 20.
Merciless.
Was that merciless?
Yeah, merciless.
Love it. Love it. He was a merciless,
Punishing.
punishing, kind of. Doesn't work so well in the flow. Give me some more. Let me just hear a bunch of words.
Angry.
And he's always
Yes.
angry, but he gets angry about different kinds of things. I need something that really captures that, militaristic flavor.
Totalitarian.
Totalitarian. Now, see, that carries political connotations
Brutal.
that are a little bit misleading. What's that?
Authoritarian.
Authoritarian does the same thing. I mean, he's God. He's the authority. So that doesn't help us.
Would it be passionate?
Louder?
Passionate?
Passionate. That can mean all kinds of things. Jesus can
He's
passionately
armed.
love you. That's not what we're talking about. See, this is how you write. This is the hard part. Finding the words that perfectly match your purpose here.
Brutal.
Brutal! I love that word. A
Yeah.
merciless, brutal, and now we need a noun. Basically, what kind of God is he, obviously? Most of y'all put this in your papers.
Mighty.
Mighty.
Warrior.
He's God. Of course he's mighty.
Warrior.
Warrior, thank you. Okay, so we go from a merciless, brutal warrior God. Ah, that says something. That's communicating something to your audience. Now, we need the contrast. I need two adjectives that not just capture the classical age, but also show the difference between the classical and the Bronze Age. Next adjective.
Gentle.
Hey, what?
Loving. Forgiving.
Gentle.
Holy.
He's always holy. He's God.
I mean,
Gentle.
Gentle. We'll say gentler.
Merciful.
Mercy. You know what? Merciless. Merciful. Okay. That
And
works.
forgiving. Very forgiving.
Okay, so merciful, forgiving. Okay, what else might we say here? There's not just one right answer. Although
Like
the
a
word
hippie.
brutal is perfect. What else?
Like, what's the professional word for hippie?
For what?
For hippie.
For hippie?
Yeah.
Like my parents? Let's see. They were, I mean, groovy? I don't think you want to call them groovy.
I like groovy.
I like the word groovy too. I'm trying to bring it back. Please use it in your conversations.
Cool.
He was cool? It's too vague.
Well tempered. Even tempered.
Even
Passive.
tempered? Maybe.
Yeah, passive.
Maybe. Passive, is passive really a good word to talk about God?
No.
Yeah.
He's like a father figure.
Well, that's Jesus. He's going to present the
Loving?
father figure. We're not quite there yet. So I heard forgiving. I heard even-tempered. I mean, he gets mad here. I mean, no,
Civilized?
I don't like him. He's always angry. He just gets angry about different kinds of things.
What about civilized?
Civilized,
Or
okay?
controlled.
Merciful, civilized. Now I need a noun.
Nice person.
Blah. Blah. No, better. Give me a better word.
Father.
We just said
No.
that's more like Jesus.
Forgiving.
No,
Need a
no.
noun.
Oh,
I can't really say
Helper.
leader or anything like that because he's God.
He's
So-
like a helper.
Well, but we're not talking about God. We're talking about their understanding of God. What words did they use? Talk about God. Because here's
Our
what God
Savior.
is. We're mere mortals.
Savior.
A what?
Savior.
See, now that carries a lot of connotation
Deity?
of Jesus and going
No.
to heaven, which does not exist for them.
Sacrificial.
Well, you always sacrifice, so that applies to any time period. Oh, internet connection's unstable. Am I back?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what does he do
He's
in
on-
Genesis?
He's
What does he do in the opening chapters of Genesis? Creates, right?
Creator. Yeah, creator.
All right, so maybe creator. Or maybe we want to say moral lawgiver. I mean, you make this your own. And once you say creator up here, then you might look back and say, wait a minute, I need to contrast that. So maybe instead of merciless, I'll use destructive, brutal warrior compared to a merciful, civilized creator. And then I've got destroy and create in the same contrast sentence there. That's how you write an essay, with lots of editing and revising. Don't you dare turn in your first effort or even your fifth effort at the essay. You revise and revise, and you read and you work and you think more, and you stay up way too late and you drink coffee and you go for a walk and clear your head and you come back. It's a long, sweaty, through the night labor to write an essay. But if you do that and you do it right, you take yourself into this level of ultimate focus and you produce writing that when you go back and read it a year later, you'll be like, damn, that was good. I wrote something good here. When you're walking around in your regular life, your mind's not that deeply focused. When you write, you get to a new place if you do it correctly. All right? All right. A destructive, brutal warrior god evolves into a merciful, civilized creator god in the minds of the ancient Hebrews as they evolved from the Bronze Age to the Classical Age. Now, an A-plus essay might also comment on why. Back here, they were conquering people. Down here, they have been conquered. So all that warrior destructive stuff doesn't play so well when you just got your butt stomped by the Babylonians. Your stories are not going to reflect lived reality anymore. So that goes back to the historical context you want to couch it in. Okay? A really, really excellent paper would do that as well. But I want to see you do at least this much. Find good words and say something. And make it connected. Keep your mental focus. Let your voice come out. The quotes serve you. Alrighty, my friends. Have we learned something about writing today?
Yes.
Yes.
And I say my friends ironically because, of course, we're not friends.
Yeah.
I'm just the professor. Okay. Who
Understood.
cares what I think about?
I'm
I have no
just a
personal
student.
opinion.
Yeah.
Understood, sir.
Okay, good. All right, now, for next class, before we forget all this, I need you to write me a one-page, one-paragraph essay. The topic will
About
be
what?
the meaning of the ministry of Jesus. The meaning of the ministry of Jesus. One page, one paragraph, and I'll give you a hint. First of all, there's nothing new to go discover. Usually an essay, I set you up and you go find something. This one, all you're doing is summarizing the last class's lecture in a paragraph. And all I want you to practice are the techniques of figuring out what to say and especially what order to say them in order to communicate. Pretend that your classmate read the Sermon on the Mount, but they missed the lecture. You need to explain to them why it is that love fulfills the law. Okay, that's the end point of your paragraph. You need to figure out what to say, what order to say it, and I'll give you a hint. It will require a minimum of 8 sentences to do this properly. In other words, there's basically 8 things you need to say. You might write more, and that's fine. But there's basically 8 essential things you will need to say in order to explain to your absent classmate what the meaning of the ministry of Jesus was. I want you to have that uploaded to the Canvas page by the time class starts on Thursday. Okay?
All right.
Mm-hmm.
All right then.